The rare Sunday morning pod, because it's a rare week. NFL Combine week is over. Doug and I are still alive, the people's favorite guest, my favorite colleague. We have dropped the much anticipated, honestly, on this podcast, the much bragged about is NFL Combine intel. You want to know what the Patriots are doing in free agency, the draft, trades, some stuff on the crafts, Vrabel, his new right-hand man stretch, extra notes on Barmore and the receivers. It is all up at thebostonherald.com right now. But I know you, first of all, I know you listening and watching because you watch the show, probably prefer to continue to listen, watch as opposed to read. So Doug is here. He and I are probably, like 60% battery after this week?
Yeah, maybe like up to 75 after getting some sleep last night. But yesterday I was at about, let's say, like 20%.
Yeah. Okay. Jealous.
Yeah.
And this is not to, brag about like how late we were up or what we were doing. But look, the bottom line is this. From my view, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the most intel you and I have packed into an article ever. End of season recaps included, behind the scenes look at Mac Jones, anything post free agency draft, middle of the season. Like this is it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the most. Like there's not to brag, there's some heavy competition there with some of those articles, but yeah, this is probably the most we've packed into one article before.
Yeah, strictly speaking about ourselves, for ourselves, all that. And this is a big week for the Patriots at the Combine because obviously Vrabel was there, Wolf was there. I last recorded on Tuesday with Alex Barth. And I love that Barth was there because it was his first Combine. And I think back to my first Combine and just how different it was and how much time I spent in places that I don't even bother to go anymore
for sure.
right now, based on how things go. So for the people watching on YouTube who are wondering where the hell Doug is because he has this background, this is one of the places that he and I sit in to gather all of the intel that we're about to unload for you here now. Again, free agency, draft, trades, everything. That is the Starbucks at the JW Marriott in Indianapolis downtown, where I think there's a permanent imprint of our asses in the seats behind them because how long do we sit and stay there as everyone across the league goes into the Starbucks or walks through to get to other places. Oh, I got a meeting is like the most popular phrase of the whole Combine. What else would you add just to how the week went, 5 days, 5 nights, as we're there with Bass Live, who did great work, ESPN, Reese, and Chad Graff, and the Globe, et cetera, all down there.
Well, first of all, this is a now infamous Starbucks since it was the site of the Ian Rappaport, Jordan Schultz confrontation. I don't know exactly how to put it because that somehow occurred in like the 5 minutes that we weren't in this spot. But yeah, we really camped out here as much as possible. At one point I was sitting at one of the high top tables outside Starbucks and a scout from another team that I've become friendly with was like, man, you are grinding out here, constantly grinding. I'm like, it's what you got to do out here. But yeah, no, I mean, it was decent amount of Patriots people out there, no coaches outside of Mike Vrabel, but a lot of front office
special teams guys.
But right, and the special teams guys. Yeah, I keep forgetting about that. Jeremy Springer and Tom Quinn were out there for a few days. But yeah, just trying to run into as many front office people as possible, agents as possible, front office people and coaches from other teams as well. And yeah, I mean, I've been coming to the Combine since 2015. Certainly my process has changed quite a bit since then, since like you and your first Combine, I had zero idea what I was doing down there. But yeah, I think we both were kind of trying to switch off between nights with very little sleep and some sleep just to recharge the batteries a little bit. I went to the park with Olivia yesterday and I was talking to another parent that Olivia met the kid at the park. I was just chatting with the parent. I was like, yeah, I got like 3.5 hours of sleep last night. Just got off a plane. So I take Olivia to the playground. She's like, "What is going on?" I tried to kind of explain to her the whole Combine process, but it's a grind, but it's fun.
Yeah,
and rewarding.
Very rewarding. Gracious to the Herald first and foremost to send us there for 5 days and 5 nights because I think people are starting to slowly catch on again, as I did, that the Combine, in a larger sense, is a front for free agency talk. And whether this is reporters to teams, teams to agents, agents to reporters, it's obviously focused on the draft, but it's much more of a TV product. And so it's not just us when we talk about, oh, the reporters go and they hang out and they're at steakhouses and bars and yada, yada, until 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the bar. That's not the point. The point is the coaches are doing this. The agents are doing this. The executives are doing this, whether we're there or not. So we are there very often to follow, or as I always put it, kind of fishing, either in a Starbucks or hanging out in a hotel lobby where we know these people are at any hour of the day or night. Anyway, very proud of what we have. So let's get to it. One of my favorite segments in the show, not Andrew drinks alone and talks to himself during a sad film review, But Andrew and Doug read their own work right now. Okay. So let's start with free agency. People want to know names. What are the names?
Yeah. Top guys to watch include Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley, Eagles defensive tackle Milton Williams, 49ers cornerback Charvarius Ward, and Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin. Those are like the top end names that are out there that Patriots are expected to pursue. And there's a lot of names out there that Patriots are not expected to pursue either, just because they don't view players as a fit, concerns about injuries, expecting to make a little bit more money than the Patriots are willing to pay, because the Patriots are still taking a smart approach to free agency. They're not just throwing money all willy-nilly at every single prospect that shows interest. But those really are probably like the top 4 names that you would toss out there in positions of need for the Patriots, because we've talked about all offseason: wide receiver, left tackle, cornerback, defensive tackle. You'd throw a defensive end in there as well. It's just kind of top loaded at that position with guys that the Patriots just might not pursue at defensive end, but that's certainly a need that the Patriots are realizing as well.
So one name you left out there that I know has been the talk of the town while we've been gone is T. Higgins. And I want to say this: there was no one that you and I talked to in the league, agents or otherwise,
right,
that believe Higgins is available. When it's reported the Bengals are likely to apply the franchise tag, they go, yeah, he's off the market. Like, they really want to retain him. And Joe Burrow has applied a ton of pressure. But if Higgins was seen as available, and maybe things change. It's only Sunday, March 2nd. We still have 8 days until the legal tampering period opens, and all of these deals sprout up at 12:01 p.m. Like, look at this. Patriots made quick work with whomever. They would be in on him. There's interest.
Right.
As an agent said to me, everyone in the league knows the Patriots want T. So it's not that the Patriots suddenly looked at T. Higgins and unearthed some nugget in his scouting report that said, oh, we're out. There is a discussion about, do you want to go $30 million for a guy, a receiver, as you kind of build out your team from the trenches first? But there is interest in T. Higgins. Mike Giardi had this first, saying, look, once Higgins was out the market, that's when they stopped pursuing. But it wasn't that they stopped themselves. So we're corroborating what Mike has, and that's all we have on Higgins, who otherwise, again, is just not seen as someone who's
yeah, and like, when a player's franchised, he can still be traded, but Patriots don't really want to trade, let's say, like a second round pick for T. Higgins, and then also have to sign him to a $30 million or 35, whatever it's going to be, $1 million per year deal as well, because then, like, it's fine to throw out the money, but this is a team that needs to build as much as possible through the draft, and that's been something that obviously Elliott Wolf, coming from the Packers, always wanted to do. We'll see how Mike Vrabel, John Stryker, and Ryan Cowden change that process, but you don't want to have to do both for a player like, let's say, T. Higgins. Like, maybe for a higher echelon wide receiver, you might be willing to do that, but it's not really what the Patriots should be doing right now.
Yeah, and when you talk about upper echelon, like T. Higgins very well maybe number one. I've argued his metrics
for sure,
independent of playing opposite Jamar Chase, which is the big question. Could you operate in a vacuum or on your own as a number one, are good enough? But you throw in the hamstring issues and you go, if you're committing that many resources, even as a team that has the most or second most resources when you combine draft capital and cap space, you'd rather have a sure thing. That's like Justin Jefferson type of money.
Right, well, it was A.J. Brown from a few years ago. When the Eagles made that deal, it made complete sense. But T. Higgins right now is not at the level that A.J. Brown was a few years ago.
Yeah, which brings us to DK Metcalf, who has been had a growing place in my heart over the last few weeks, entertaining, kicking around, possible trade, and actually pitched this to a Patriots front office member. I was like, oh, it's a compelling case. But even though the Patriots, as we can report, have kicked the tires on a possible trade for Metcalf, for the reasons you just outlined, seems pretty unlikely. Because, again, it's not only just the resources of whatever it costs to trade for him and then the contract, where a 3-year deal would take him just past his 30th birthday. It's the idea that, okay, once we say we're willing to trade this for this player, we're willing to pay this amount to this player, make him the highest paid player in the team, the moment he steps in the locker room, he has more power than anybody else, more influence. And we've seen this in bad examples before in the last couple of years of guys that you go, everyone's looking up to Matt Judon on a contract year. This doesn't look so good. Devon Godchaux gets an extension. Stuff he's saying after games doesn't sound great. Do we want to do this with a player we're not familiar with? And so Vrabel has said, look, they need to be tough. They need to have good play demeanor and play style. They need to be aligned with us to build the culture. It's not to dump on DK Metcalf. It's just to say, when you make that commitment, Same as proposing to someone. Like, it can't just be that we're a good fit on paper and you're really hot. It's like we are aligned in values and everything else and trust. And that's a big commitment. I'm not sure the Patriots are willing to make with a guy they thoroughly do not know.
Yeah. And I mean, when we kind of brought it up to a team source, was like, yeah, I mean, it's been discussed, just because like everything's been discussed, but it wasn't emphatic like, yes, that's something that we are actively pursuing and want to do. It wasn't that type of situation. So yeah, I'd say it like remains a possibility, but I wouldn't put a whole lot of, I wouldn't get super optimistic about that being the type of thing that the Patriots want to do. And it is like, I had talked about this before the combine, and it only kind of strengthens my opinion on this now. Like, it's certainly possible that the Patriots add a wide receiver, like Chris Godwin would probably be the top available need right now as far as free agency goes, but it wouldn't be surprising if the Patriots came out of free agency and like that pre-draft period without having that like filling needs in a stronger way at other positions, I guess I would say, than at wide receiver.
Right. And I don't know if we've said this before, because again, my brain, there has to be a case of like combine brain. And if so, I have it. And if there wasn't confirmation already in this show that I have a lot of problems, it was the fact that when I went to bed at 9:30 and had my first dream and woke up at 11, it was you and I meeting with an agent that we didn't actually get a hold of at the combine on Friday. So the point is, I don't know if we said this yet, but the Patriots are not optimistic about Chris Godwin leaving. I don't know many people in the league that also think he'll leave Tampa Bay, the only NFL team he's known. You know, he's been there the entire time, obviously, with the front office, different quarterbacks, but the latest quarterback, Baker Mayfield, people really like playing with. So it doesn't make sense for Tampa to let him go. High character guy, though. That's a type of player where you talk about questions of not football characters. It's not an assault on DK Metcalf, but there are no questions about what Chris Godwin would bring from that standpoint in the locker room and work ethic, and you can build a champion with. As I've discussed, Tom Brady talked about him, raved about him more than any other teammate. All right, left tackle. Alaric Robinson came off the market while we were at the combine, and we're going, all right, they got three options at left tackle, and it starts with Stanley, followed by Dan Moore, Cam Robinson. People you talked with said, look, we're comfortable with all of them. And this speaks to what Elliott and Mike Vrabel spoke to publicly at the podium Tuesday, Wednesday, saying if plan A doesn't work out, we're going to pivot quickly to plan B. Plan B doesn't work out, we're going to plan C. This is a prime example of that.
Yeah, and that was multiple people that I was basically just like, you guys in on the tackles? Yes. This guy? Yes. This guy? Yes. Yes. And like, they know that they need to come out of free agency with a viable left tackle. They can't go into the season again the way they did last year, where, you know, Chukwuma Okorafor, a right tackle, has to move to left tackle, then quits after one game. They can't go into a situation then where Vidarian Lowe is going to be their left tackle, because Vidarian Lowe certainly tried as hard as he possibly could last year, but still proved that he was not going to be a viable starting candidate at that spot. And really, obviously, they do need to, I think they would ideally like to come out with two starting tackles. I think in an ideal situation, based on what we heard, Caden Robinson, who was last year's third-round pick, would be the third guy. And we did hear that the Patriots are high on Ken Wallace, that even new offensive line coach Doug Marrone is optimistic about Ken Wallace's future. But in saying that, it's still telling that, like I said, in an ideal situation, they come out of all of this with two tackles and certainly one guy who can protect Drake May's blind side. And yeah, the guys left there are Ronnie Stanley's the top option, but you got Cam Robinson, you got Dan Moore Jr., and beyond that, there's not a lot of options. So this is one area where the Patriots really probably do need to pay up just to ensure that they've got someone that they can trust in that position.
Yeah, and Alaric Jackson outperformed, for whatever they're worth, certain media projections by like $2 or $3 million per year in this extension. So if you're Ronnie Stanley and Patriots fans are going, okay, they need him, he's got a better market, he can ask for more. There's still a viable pitch here where you don't go over the top in terms of, you know, $25-30 million for a left tackle. You go, hey, we're going to give you a 2-year deal. You're 31, or about to turn 31. We'll do it mostly guaranteed, like 2 for 22 per year, 2 for 24 per year. So you don't have to worry about losing money in injuries. And when you do hit the market again, you're still at an age where teams look at you, maybe even better than Morgan Moses, who is another name, and say, you can still cash in a little bit later. What do you think? And that's a guy, too, character-wise, no questions or concerns. It's just injury. But aside from a devastating ankle injury that had follow-up and some issues, that wiped out 2 seasons. He's averaged 14 games per year the last 3 seasons. So I don't think those concerns are as big. Sticking with the offensive
I would also say, just as a brief aside, like coming out of this week, conversations with agents, I think we had a pretty good idea of this beforehand, but like teams know where they stand after this week. I know that technically they are not having any conversations about free agents because that would be illegal. That would be tampering. That would go against NFL rules. But one way or another, they come out of this week having a pretty good sense of whether or not they're going to be within a player's, let's say, like top 3 to 5 teams.
Yes. Yeah. And they also know what players are going to get. The agent's job is to survey the market in addition to historical data points. And we've talked about this before, production, draft status, age, health. Like you can kind of figure out what guys should get. Teams have wildly different views sometimes on what a player is worth. But nonetheless, if you're on a low end of a player talking theoretically to an agent, he might just say, forget about it. You don't have to talk to us if this is the number that you're coming in with. This is the top 3 or 4 or 5. You mentioned Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson, and that was a good note we actually omitted from the article about Doug Marrone being high in Caden Wallace, who's the 3rd-round rookie tackle last year, got hurt, obviously. Their vision as a team seems to be if Wallace is a swing tackle, as you said, and Layden Robinson is a swing guard inside, that's ideal because what that says is you've secured starting caliber players everywhere else, and maybe Cole Strange makes his magical leap. Who knows? But that includes center, which is a position to watch here where I think the Patriots are going to be out on the top level centers in the free agent market. But as much as, look, I was wrong on this, penciling in David Andrews as starting center in 2025, that might not be the case given how they're approaching free agency and what we learned about the draft as well.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like I mean, one way or the other, David Andrews missed the season with a shoulder injury. And like even last year, the talk was kind of like, yeah, hopefully he can be 100% for 2025 because he underwent the surgery. So I do think it's smart to have a plan B. And that's telling you that the Patriots have a better plan than they did last year when at some positions, like when they whipped on plan A, they had to go to like plan H, like it was like it got bad. So that at least tells you that they are saying like, we know we need this position. We can't handle this the way that we did last year. So even like you said, a position that you would think that you'd be set on, like at center, if David Andrews can't play, you need someone in there. And I don't think they're going to be willing to pay someone, like $20 million a year at that position or anything like that. But it really is all along the offensive line that they're looking for players. And Trey Smith was franchised this week by the Chiefs. So he's also off the table. So that's where you have to pivot on these things. Like where you think that all these free agents are going to be available in early February. Now you're talking about possibly like, 3 of the top 20 or whatever free agents now in T. Higgins, Trey Smith, and Larry Jackson are off the board. And we still have 8 days until the start of free agency. So some of these other guys might come off the board as well before them.
You want to talk defense?
Sure. Hell yeah.
So rumor has it, the Patriots covet Jets linebacker Jamien Sherwood, who in any year of the past 24 seasons, you and I would be studying free agency and be like, he's 6'2", 216 pounds to play as linebacker.
Yeah.
Hell no. Right. But in Mike Vrabel's new defense, with new defensive coordinator Terrell Williams, who's going to call plays, as we heard on Tuesday from Vrabel, they want smaller, faster guys. What the defense is going to look like in New England moving forward is what it looked like in Tennessee, where guys like David Long played linebacker and were 219 pounds. But what David Long and what Jamien Sherwood do to overcome the fact that they are 216 and 219 pounds respectively is hit like a mother. And that's what Vrabel wants. This is aligned with the vision of guys who are going to have high character. They're going to be violent. They're going to be physical. So the guys they bring in fit the vision that he has already, in addition to the fact that they're trying to add more speed to the front in the defense. And I'll say this too, when we talk about their top free agent targets, it's not just the big names everyone's been discussing for the last month or so. Ronnie Stanley being a prime example, Chris Godwin another. There are mid-level veterans that you and I have heard they are going to come heavy for on day one, perhaps exceeding their markets, but fit this same vision. A little bit lighter, but they're playmakers and they're tough as hell.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, Jamien Sherwood is a guy that specifically, like I was told, that's the type of players they're looking for at that position. And it is interesting because like I think he probably weighs less than Kyle Duggar, maybe even weighs less than Jabril Peppers, but just a different play style. And like, you want that linebacker mentality, but in kind of a smaller, more compact body type.
Right. Let's get to some names that they are not in on, because I think these would surprise some folks. Josh Sweat, Eagles defensive end. Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Khalil Mack. Not expected to draw interest from the Patriots. Were any of those a surprise to you?
I think Josh Sweat was someone that a lot of people expected to draw interest from the Patriots. So that's one that people would probably be a little bit upset about, maybe. But yeah, like Khalil Mack's not a big surprise. That's someone that, you know, he's older. He's probably going to be looking to compete for like a Super Bowl, for a championship. For, you know, so that's not necessarily the greatest fit there. Amari Cooper and Stephon Diggs. You know, with Cooper, I think that there's a fear that he's kind of lost a step right now at this point. And with Stephon Diggs, unclear why that would not be the greatest fit. But no, I wouldn't say necessarily like majorly surprised. But if there are any concerns about Josh Sweat at all, then you don't want to have to pay him the amount of money that everyone else is paying.
Okay, two other names that I would file under a maybe are Byron Murphy from the Vikings and DJ Reed from the Jets. Obviously, both corners. They are going to command a bit more money than I think folks expect. But in addition to Charvarius Ward being near the top of the Patriots board, it clearly tells us that the Patriots are trying to remake their vision at corner, where guys like Jonathan Jones, they want back, but at a certain price. I've heard Marcus Jones does not fit what Mike Vrabel wants to do on defense. And so those two might be a matter of price. And then another example where they're going to go plan A to B to C to D. I'm just curious because, like, they obviously you're going to command a lot of money, and that'll be a place where I think the Patriots have a limit that if those guys go up and above, they'll quickly move on from.
Yeah, it does sound like Murphy will probably wind up being out of the Patriots price range. That they might go for someone maybe a little bit cheaper. But I mean, if it doesn't come in as high as expected, then certainly a possibility there. DJ Reed has been a great player for the Jets, but like I think that cornerback is such a sneaky need for the Patriots because you got by last year with Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones, and then you threw in, you know, Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, but like you really ideally need a strong number two across from Christian Gonzalez. And it's when you have Christian Gonzalez, when you have someone who can be the best cornerback in the NFL as one of your outside cornerbacks, you don't necessarily want to then like take another guy in the top 4 of the draft or anything like that. So it might be a better solution to fill that through free agency. But I mean, teams value nickel cornerback so much as well right now that's another area where I really would not be surprised if the Patriots spent more than people expected to, because you think of it as being a third cornerback, but like that guy's on the field for about 90% of the time. So like I said, would not be surprised if the Patriots wound up spending hefty money on a nickel or a slot, especially if that player has some versatility to play outside a little bit as well.
And there are a few things we like to do more in this business than read too far into certain lines in press conferences. But Mike Vrabel brought this up in his own press conference, asked about how the game has changed and trends. He was like, oh, RPO stuff, some teams like to do this, blah, blah, blah. They got very specific, saying that the nickelback can be a very dynamic player. And as I've discussed here, Jonathan Jones, if he does return, I think would fill kind of a utility role within that secondary, having played the slot outside and a little bit of free safety. So if they are going to spend, like you said, or overspend, I think nickel is at the top of that list of one of those positions because, as you said, that's a starter. It's been a starter for the last decade. Okay, zooming out. Here's the big picture plan. It is going to be trenches first in free agency, followed closely by corner, receiver, and linebacker. They're going to come heavy, big offers, their best offers to their top targets, which is a mix of top of the market players, the Ronnie Stanleys of the world, Chris Godwins of the world. If they don't, they move on. But also some of those top targets are guys who are mid-level veterans that if they overspend on, won't hurt as much. Unlike past off seasons, you had heard Patriots are not going to hesitate to sign a guy if he plays the same position as someone they just drafted.
Right. Yep.
It's a new regime. They're ready to go in. And one sleeper position to watch, as we already said, will be center. Did we miss anything else about free agency?
No, the way that I would sum it up is that like they want to come out of free agency with like 5 or 6 starters so that then they can head into the draft, which we'll get into in a second, having as much flexibility as possible and taking the best available player, whether that's staying put at number 4 overall, trading down, whatever they want to do there at number 4, they really want to have that flexibility to take whatever player they view as most valuable. I think that was a big thing they did last year, was draft too much for need, and then they had to settle on guys who underperformed last year. And it does seem like the goal this year is to take the best guy, fill as many needs as free agency, spend that $130 million. Even though Elliot Wolf did say they're not going to be frivolous, wouldn't expect them to spend completely up to the cap, but they are going to spend a lot of that money.
Yeah, I mean, if you spent up to the cap, you're talking about like record-setting spending, which they've done before.
Yeah, right.
But it's also to maintain some flexibility. You want to take on bad contracts for other players at a pick and kind of a salary dump, or just players that other teams can't afford and you can't. Like, there are reasons to keep some cap space beyond March 17th or whatever it's going to be.
For sure.
Besides just trying to not spend as much as possible. Okay. They, as you said, want to treat free agency as filling most, if not all, of their needs. That's how you should treat free agency. Fill your needs. You go into the draft, get the best player available regardless. That's not going to happen because of how many freaking needs that they have. But if they get close, they will, as someone told both of us, have the ability, in this best case scenario as they see it, to potentially control the draft, their words, at number 4. This would necessitate, though, I should mention, Cam Ward at least going ahead in the top 3, which I think is reasonable. A lot of folks are assuming whether it's to Tennessee at number 1, the Browns at number 2, the Giants at number 3. And ideally for the Patriots, Shedeur Sanders going top 3, the Colorado quarterback. I don't see Sanders happening based on stuff that we've heard, what I've seen of him. I don't know an elite trait that kind of stands out. The top one is toughness, which is like when you're selling someone to date a good friend of yours. Oh, he's a great guy, like really nice, good personality kind of scouting report. Okay. It's a good thing to have, but like top 3, you want something better than a better personality. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, I asked 3 people in the Patriots front office, like maybe even 4. Like, do you see 2 quarterbacks going above you? One person said, like, that's something that I've heard, is that 2 quarterbacks could go within the top 3 picks. Another person said, I don't know. Like, it seems like based on the players there, might not be the most likely scenario. Another person said it's possible that 2 quarterbacks go in the top 3. So, like, I don't think we're talking about a situation where it's like there's no possible way that the Patriots are sitting there at number 4 and don't have at least one of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter available for them. Is it likely? I don't know. It depends on who you ask at this point, because we're still almost 2 months away from the draft. But it does not seem out of the realm of possibility. I will say that, like, a lot of people do think the Patriots are in a good spot at number 4, that there's going to be a good player available for them, and that the draft really starts to drop off a little bit more towards like 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. The other thing I will say is that, like, on paper, Titans need a quarterback, Browns need a quarterback, Giants need a quarterback. You said that. Raiders, number 6, they need a quarterback. Jets, number 7, they need a quarterback. The Saints, a team that has not been hesitant to move up in the draft when they really like someone, sitting there at number 9. So even if it's not necessarily those top 3 teams that want a quarterback, it is still possible that a team could look at the Patriots number 4 and say, like, all right, we don't want anyone to trade up above us. Let's move up for the quarterback now. So they're not going to get a haul like, what was it, the Bears did when the Panthers drafted Bryce Young, but it is still at least possible, and the Patriots are still considering it a possibility that they could move down there from number 4 overall. And like, even like one of the rumors out of the combine was that Aaron Rodgers could wind up signing with the Giants, which certainly would be an easy move for him. He'd just be moving facilities across the street or whatever it is. But for a team like the Giants at number 3 overall, even if they sign Aaron Rodgers, like, they still need a quarterback. They still need a rookie quarterback. So I don't know if Aaron Rodgers would love that, but realistically speaking, if you sign Aaron Rodgers, you still do need a quarterback to develop behind him.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. Aaron Rodgers would not like that. But you know, when you're 41 and you played like crap for different parts of last season, you don't really get a say. He might not agree. He might say, I'm Aaron Rodgers, I get to call the shots.
It is true. But like, going into that for one more second, like, no one saw the Falcons signing Kirk Cousins and then drafting Michael Penix at number 9 overall or whatever, number 8 overall, whatever that was. So like, even if a team signs a veteran, don't take them off the board for a quarterback.
And so in this scenario, best case scenario for the Patriots, if Travis Hunter does fall to 4, something, again, I just see as unlikely given everything that we've heard out of Indy. Generational college player, unbelievable prospect, regardless of receiver, corner, whatever. the Patriots could look and help to fill a need short and long term by taking him, or pending the offers they get from all those teams they listed. I think it's a great list for people to keep in mind. The Jets, the Saints, and the Raiders, who are in 6 and 9, they could move back and still be within that range from people that you and I talk to that say, yeah, there's a drop off right when you get up and close to 10. Mm-hmm. You secure extra capital, and a leap from 6 to 4, if they dealt with Las Vegas, would typically command around a 3rd round pick. If Hunter is there, or a quarterback that multiple teams covet, the Patriots go, no, it's going to be a 3rd and then some, or it might be a 2nd. Like, this is going to exceed the typical trade value charts. So I do feel better about the Patriots overall, better at number 4 coming out of this week than I did before. Okay, let's stay with this scenario because, if they stick and pick at number 4, we've all heard the same names. Will Campbell, whose arms just came in shorter than expected, 32 and 5/8 inches. Not great for his prospects at left tackle, but we'll see. Mason Graham and Travis Hunter. Okay, it should be one of those names unless Abdul Carter falls. Doesn't seem likely. Okay, that's it. That's boring. We kind of know that. If they trade back, you had heard, keep an eye on Ted McMillan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like he was impressive in his interview with the Patriots. I'd be hesitant to take too much out of what players say in their post media availability about meetings with teams, because like from what I've heard, it's like some players are like, who am I meeting with right now? Like it's such a car wash for them that I wouldn't pay that much attention to that. But when it's coming from the other side and teams are impressed with the player, that's what to take a little bit more seriously. And yeah, Ted McMillan's not going to be, or he actually doesn't like Ted. He likes either T-Mac or Ted Aroa. Yeah. So McMillan wouldn't be a good possibility at number 4 overall, but if you trade back into that, let's say like 7 to 12 range, somewhere in there, then I think that becomes a little bit more of a possibility. And if you are looking for an X wide receiver this offseason, like your option for like a plug and play guy is basically only Ted McMillan right now. Like we'll see what else comes out of the draft. We'll see how high these guys rise, but even some of the other top wide receivers like the Matthew Goldens, Mecca Buka, like all these guys are probably better Z or slot receivers. McMillan is really the only guy who's that 6'5" prototypical X. So if the Patriots are able to trade back, acquire more top 100 picks, maybe even acquire a pick for the future, McMillan certainly fills a big need for the Patriots that I don't think they'll be able to fill in the correct way in free agency or a trade.
And I asked someone in an AFC front office about I would say it's growing. It's not there yet, but like the N'Keal Harry PTSD, when you look at a guy who's from the West Coast, RIP right. The Pac-12, but if it was still around, he's coming from the same conference, similar build. And they said, look, T-Mac, Tero, or not, as it was said to me on the radio, Tetawa. But then nonetheless, 6 in my mind is the worst/best mispronunciation I've heard. McMillan has better ball skills. He's a little bit more of a fluid mover. He doesn't separate great, which is immediately like 5-alarm fire in my head when talking about receiver prospects. But they said it's different. He's better. There's no guarantee to hit, but also just for general first-round receivers, it'd be hard to do worse than N'Keal Harry. So I'm a little higher. I'm coming around on Tedero McMillan than I didn't expect to again coming into the combine. All right,
just a different body type also than N'Keal Harry. I know they're around the same height-ish, but N'Keal Harry was like doing so much stuff after the catch. McMillan is like a better contested catch guy, a little bit thinner, but like sometimes that could be good for downfield. So yeah, it's a different situation.
And the Drake London comp is real. Like that's right, a guy who also went top 10, chose not to run, knowing it wouldn't be a strength of his in the process, and it still worked out. And obviously he's playing really well in Atlanta.
Right.
When you move back into like day 2, early day 3, the Patriots, like the rest of the league, we know are extremely high in this defensive line class. They like the running backs. They like the tight end. It's a deep tight end class. I wouldn't be surprised to see one go in that same range. The other position, though, we talked about this in free agency, is still corner. Like there are a couple guys that we've heard that they love in that range, and I wouldn't be surprised to see double dip. Depending how things go in free agency, if they sign another starter opposite Christian Gonzalez and they sign a new nickel, I wouldn't love the double dip approach. But if there is a position you want depth in, particularly with a group that you're going to overhaul due to the scheme change, that's a premium position. That's one that you should look to invest in the short and long term and could be a possibility come late April.
Yeah, and if they come out of free agency with a nickel, then they're probably looking more at like an outside cornerback there in that range. If they come out of the free agency with an outside cornerback, then they're probably looking for a nickel in the draft, because that is like you have to look at cornerback and say like, we might need to fill 2 starting slots, really depending on how exactly. I know you said like some people don't think that Marcus Jones is a great fit for the Patriots at cornerback. Like if you're talking about Marcus Jones or like replacement player X, maybe you still do say like, hey, let's give Marcus Jones a shot just because he is such a good special teams player, and let's like just see if he fits in there. But I do think that ideally you would want to come out of this offseason with 2 starting caliber cornerbacks in free agency in the draft, and it really depends on what they fill as for what they would be looking for in the draft at that position.
Okay, let's talk trades. But first, a quick break.
All right, timeout. Enough about free agency. Enough about the draft. No more mocks, no more rumors, no more whispers, no more mailbag. It is time to talk, not about football or anything like that. PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, because when I'm not on this podcast and I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the Celtics, or it could be a hockey game, or it could be a baseball game. Sox are just around the corner. I am playing PrizePicks, and I am winning. And I would like you, as someone who supports this podcast, to win a little bit too. Because right now at PrizePicks, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash and run your game all season long. When you build your lineup, you know the deal. 2 to 6 players, all right? Every single time you go to PrizePicks, online or on the app, you'll see a player, and they'll have a stat. And all you have to do with your lineup is pick the player, go more or less on that stat. It could be Jason Tatum 5 threes. If you think he'll hit him more than 5 threes, he's going to hit more. If you think Kristaps Porzingis will have less than 18 points, hit less. Boom. That's a lineup right there. So 2 to 6 player stat projections over at PrizePicks. Basketball, hockey, baseball around the corner. Of course, football will be back too. And when you sign up today, if you're a new customer, here's the best part. You get $50. 5-0 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus 5-0. You just have to play. So sign up today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and you will get $50 instantly with the promo code CLNS after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your.
What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media with a very exciting announcement. Here at Patriots Press Pass, we will be introducing bonus tiers. Now, this will not affect any of the content that hopefully you've grown to know and love over here at Patriots Press Pass. It's all going to be some brand new stuff and extras so we can connect with you more and also provide you some more in-depth and high-quality content. Hopefully, you guys are going to like it. Here are the tiers and what you should be expecting from all these new bonuses. At Tier 1, we've got Rookie Starter. That'll come with ad-free content, early access to videos, 5% off of all merchandise, and even custom emojis. At Tier 2, we've got All Pro. Once again, ad-free content, early access, 10% off merchandise, custom emojis, but that'll also come with player profile film reviews and draft profiles. At Tier 3, we've got GOAT status. Same as all the other tiers, but it's going to be 20% off of all merchandise, and we're also going to have custom segments, Discord chat rooms with myself and other show hosts, as well as live film reviews with myself and whomever we've got on the podcast for that day. Hoping to have some pretty fun guests.
All right, trades. So we know, and there's honestly not a whole lot here to just do the spoiler alert on generally one of the more exciting kind of rumors or things to talk about at the Combine. Patriots are exploring the receiver market. Deebo Samuel, who came off the market, 5th-round pick yesterday, was not considered a scheme fit. He's also a declining player who doesn't separate particularly well and is on a giant contract. So you want to ask why he only got a 5th-round pick. I would tell you 31 other teams didn't offer a 4th. So he's off the board. Cooper Kupp, from people we talked to, seemed more likely as a cut candidate. So the Patriots are saying if we're interested, they'll just wait that out. And DK Metcalf, we've already said they've kicked the tires on. Anything there before I talk about Javon Gottschall? Because there was stuff that I unearthed this week that wasn't terribly surprising, but provided a little bit more context. And they're like, oh, yeah, if you want to go ahead and seek a trade, go ahead.
No, nothing super surprising. I think with Deebo's contract, that really explains the compensation there, that it was only a 5th-round pick. Like, taking on that contract in general is tough. Having to give up draft capital, even a 5th-round pick, to do it. That was another one that I thought might be a cut candidate in Deebo Samuel, and I feel like the 49ers are a little bit fortunate to even get that 5th-round pick there.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the system in Washington, like he'll have an opportunity to catch a lot of passes and then run with them. Like, this is not going to be a yak designed boom or bust and everything you can do after the catch, which is really his only remaining elite skill set. You look at how often he gets open, even the catch rate, it's all gone down in San Francisco. You're not buying low in a good way. You're buying low in a way that will probably continue to decrease unless you really help them with the scheme fit. All right, Javon Gottschall. He's 30 years old. We already talked about they're looking to get lighter and faster in the front 7. He's a big dude, 2 gapping, 1 stopper, defensive tackle. Team Brass was also not enthralled with his leadership last year. A guy who I think saw himself in a light as a leader that nobody agreed with. And you could hear this in the post-game press conferences or even the scrums in the locker room, where from our standpoint, like, he's a great quote. He's open, he's honest, he says stuff other guys won't. That's good for business. But there was a point in the season, you and I both were like, I can't believe he's still saying things like, after getting obliterated by the Chargers, give up 40 points and you lose at home in a game that got your head coach fired. First comment, I think the run defense is pretty good. Like, you can't do that. And that rankled some staff members, the coaching staff, in the front office. So with all of that put together, as a guy they see is probably declining, and he might not. Like, he's got a useful skill set for certain systems that aren't being played in New England anymore. If they find a trade partner, I'd expect him to fetch a late round pick, and this is not a cut candidate. Like, I think they'll be able to offload him somewhere.
Yeah, someone we spoke to said that they feel that he's a tradable asset, that there's enough teams still doing on defense what Davon Godchaux specializes in. The Patriots do believe they should be able to find a trade partner there. And I mean, I was kind of curious how the Patriots would handle Godchaux coming into the offseason, because he actually did spend a year playing under Terrell Williams with the Dolphins. So there was a history there, but that was way back in 2017 when Davon Godchaux was a rookie, and the Dolphins, I don't know exactly what defense they were running at that point. It might have been closer to what the Patriots are doing. So this is very telling that they just say, like, listen, he's a good player, but he's not going to do what we need him to do. And just looking at his PFF numbers, like, he's topped out at 18 pressures in a single season. That's his career high. Beyond that, he's had 17 pressures, 3 different seasons. Last 2 years, Davon Godchaux has played a ton of football, and he has 13 total pressures in the last 2 years. So this is not a guy that I think it was Vrabel who said, we want to be playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage on defense, which is to say that, like, for the Patriots, they want to play like at the line of scrimmage on defense. They want Davon Godchaux to 2-gap, take up as much space as possible, and really hold his ground and let the linebackers do the work. Now they want these defensive linemen to be able to get upfield, be attacking, be able to pressure the quarterback, get in the backfield on run in the run game. And Godchaux is just not necessarily that type of player.
Yes, and this is nothing personal or honestly unique to Davon Godchaux, that a new coach comes in and some of the old coaches didn't love him, and they just say, we're going to let you go elsewhere. And it's a bummer for him. I know he wanted to stay in New England, talk about retiring in New England, following Vince Wilfork's footsteps, but it's just business. And based on conversations I had, I would not be surprised if this news got out, not from the Patriots, but from his camp, who is trying to expedite this process as fast as possible.
Right.
All right. The last nugget here has gotten a lot of discussion on other podcasts. We have not talked about it here, or I've not talked about it here, because I just don't think there's any momentum to this. But there was one person who suggested to us, who's familiar with the Patriots roster and their locker room dynamics, that Joe Milton should be traded, not just because Milton, 24, he's a backup, obviously turning 25, starred in that season finale against the Bills' second stringers, then third stringers, as they just pulled everyone and maybe out of the stands to go play for them and tank against Patriots. They know that Milton sees himself as a starter or starting caliber. So it's not that he did anything last year that kind of upset or tipped over the apple cart, but long term they go, it's not a great fit for a guy who sees himself as bigger and better than maybe his play could indicate, and maybe he takes off. Like, I'm rooting for Joe Milton. I'm rooting for all the guys to be their best and hit their potential. But league buzz, aside from that suggestion, has not matched media-driven speculation that he could get dealt moving forward. But just an interesting perspective, because I hadn't heard that yet.
Well, yeah, like obviously it's in other places that someone has suggested the Patriots should trade Joe Milton for like a 3rd or 4th round pick. I believe that same person was saying the same thing to us, but it's like, that's not realistic. Like, no one, you don't see a 24-year-old quarterback drafted in the 6th round and then traded for a 3rd round pick based on one game that both teams were playing backups. You know, like the Bills were playing backups in that last game. Patriots were also playing backups, but unfortunately they were their starters for most of the season as well in that game. But like, teams are going to look at that game and say, like, all right, let's offer a 3rd round pick for the Patriots for Joe Milton. It's not a realistic expectation, but Milton was like a good fit as a rookie, 6th round pick, 3rd string quarterback that you could develop behind the scenes. But yeah, based on what we're hearing, you kind of want that backup, that number 2, to be more of a Jacoby Brissett type, who's willing to be a coach on the field, who's willing to do all the right things. Like, we even heard that Jacoby Brissett might want to go into coaching after football. So like that really was, despite some of his comments during the season that he wasn't happy with how the season went, really did seem like he was a good soldier and genuinely liked Drake Maye. And that's why he was able to help out so much. So I don't know. I mean, like, it takes two to tango. You're not going to cut Joe Milton just because like he's not an ideal backup. You want to keep that guy because of what he can do. But like if there is a trade possibility for the Patriots where they're able to get more than what they paid for Joe Milton, then yeah, it's not the worst idea. And like we're saying, like this is someone who was inside the building last year, and their opinion that the Patriots should try to trade him because he might not be the ideal fit. That's not to say that that's exactly what is going to happen. And like you said, like, we heard nothing but good things about Joe Milton, that like he will probably try to be that backup helper and like tell Drake what he sees on the sideline, all those types of things. But you would prefer a player who's more comfortable in their situation as that backup than another young player who's looking for his future. And like, that's what the Patriots had in Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. And that was a disaster for 2 years. And I don't think that it would get anywhere close to that with Joe Milton and Drake Maye, but it's just not the ideal situation for a backup.
No, it's not. And personally, if they could flip him for a 5th round pick, I'd do that tomorrow, because I think Josh McDaniels is going to say in his free agency reports, and this is totally normal and common, I want a veteran backup who knows the system, what Brian Hoyer extended his career for like 3-4 years doing, just carrying along young quarterbacks, or in Cam Newton's case, helping him learn the system. Bring in that guy to be Drake Maye's backup. So for a new vision, you want a rebuild, you want as much draft capital as possible. If you can sell high on Joe Milton, that's great. Say best of luck. This is not, like as you said, a repeat of the Max Zappi situation, and just the opinion of someone who knows more than most, knew more than us, shared that, and it's something we put in the story. But as far as like the Joe Milton hype train, like, man, you got to stop at the station. You got to hang out. If anyone else wants to come and play conductor and take it off your hands and buy the train, great. I'm getting off here. All due respect to him, and certainly well wishes. Okay, the next section of this story I think is one that people will skim over the most, because A, it's a little bit longer. B, this talks about last season. But I got to tell you, the stuff that we learned about the fallout from last year, as two guys who wrote a very thorough story about what the hell happened in 2024, there's some really interesting nuggets. That said, I do kind of want to breeze through this because we have stuff on Drake Maye, Mike Vrabel, and his new right-hand man, Stretch, plus some extra stuff at the bottom that I know people want to get to. So of all the things here, how it ended, starting with that same game that Joe Milton started and everyone else was hearing, oh, wow, all the coaches might be fired, to Robin Glazer, to the meeting that happened Monday morning. What is the most interesting thing to you about everything we put here in that part of the story?
Well, I think a lot of people are touching on the Robin Glazer aspect the most, as far as like aggregators, and people are kind of pulling stuff out of the story. And yeah, I mean, I heard from multiple people that, you know, Glazer was someone whose job was kind of to go along being like, do we have to spend this much on this? Do we have to spend as much on this? And that's what organizations do in general. But it did become a little bit taxing for people in the building for her to be doing that. But I mean, even since then, like, that's not the reason that she was out. It just wasn't necessarily a great fit with the new regime. And there were other aspects last season where the Patriots were, let's say, like overspending on things bigger than what the Patriots were cutting costs on. And I think that the Patriots right now are having to deal with some of that, where like some of the assistant coaches that they brought in last season were signed to long-term deals for more money than they probably should have been making, simply because the Patriots were having a hard time finding people to fill some of those roles. So now the Patriots are sitting there being like, all right, now we have to pay these guys for this long. Well, we also have to sign our own coaches. We have to sign our own players. So it was a number of different factors, but yeah, I think that like it was probably an untenable situation given how much power that Robin Glazer had gotten last season with the Patriots, and the amount that then it would have to be scaled back. It was scaled back already last year, and then the amount that was probably going to have to be scaled back even more this year.
And she had a useful background and skill set in terms of executing contracts and drawing them up. That was part of the reason for her rise in the organization to where she got VP of whatever. and internally never got credit for some of that in a way that I'm not saying she should have, but I think from her standpoint, wanted to do more, receive more credit, and Gerard Mayo named her his own advisor to the head coach soon after he got the job a year ago. The flip side of that is when Teddy Bruschi hinted after Vrabel got hired that there are some people in the building who need to be told, stop, you don't know what you're doing. That was Robin Glazer. Like her influence and her reach into football operations honestly kind of like repulsed some people who were like, this is too much. This is not your area of business. There are some people that I heard after she got that job described her as being like close to a nightmare, and you hear different things. Like Devin McCourty's come on and said she was a great friend, did certain things. Other people who noted the contracts, things behind the scene in the community never got highlighted. So for me to run with just one or the other is not fair to paint a whole picture. But when you gather more intel, it was just very clear that this is someone who wanted more than she had earned and didn't fit her skill set. And so Vrabel comes in and says, not only are we just going to do things my way, we're going to do it my way with my people. And for you to be kind of an extension of ownership, someone who has more say in football in a way that you really shouldn't, but took advantage of a power vacuum and a staff that didn't know what it was doing from the top down once Belichick left. And people even in the front office go like, oh, Bill was doing a lot of stuff that we didn't even know about. We just had to pay for it.
That's a big factor there, yeah.
And she jumped into that void in a way that was not helpful to the whole organization. So she's out.
Right, because last year, it was also the hiring process of Gerard Mayo, someone who was as inexperienced as he was, where prior to that, it was Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, Bill Belichick, clear layout at the top of the organization. Last year, it was Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, crap, who's number 3? Because like Gerard Mayo's not experienced enough to do it. Elliot Wolf didn't even get the EVP title until what was that, like May or April, whatever, mid-May. So like you can't throw him into the third spot. So then it's kind of like, okay, Robin Glazer's the number 3 because she is a EVP or VP or whatever she is in the organization, and she took on so much, and Elliot Wolf took on so much that Gerard Mayo didn't know, that now a lot of people that I've spoken to are relieved that now it's back to being a clear-cut, organizational structure where you've got Robert Kraft, you've got Jonathan Kraft, and then you've got Mike Vrabel as that number 3 guy. And it simplifies so much in the building to have Mike Vrabel as someone who's as experienced as he is and has as much command as he is and as decisive as he is to be that third most powerful person in the building.
Yes. And we'll get to Vrabel in a second. Speaking of Gerard Mayo, so hours before the finale against the Bills, we all know Adam Schefter stated he was leading out on the fact that Gerard Mayo could keep his job in 2024. You and I both know Adam doesn't guess. Okay, so for him to be leading out is like, I know something you don't. And according to someone that we talked to, certain players saw that report and shared it with some of the assistants before kickoff, who then figured, well, I'm probably gone. Because of course you would be if the head coach is out. So players are not only playing with that knowledge. You had assistant coaches going, this will be my last game in New England.
Right.
Not to mention, this report comes out less than 11 months after Mayo announces in his first staff meeting. This is a detail that we just got this week. Would have loved to have had a month ago, but just got this week. He assured the assistants, everyone who had come in from Cleveland and on defense, this is a 3-year rebuild. We're going to construct the roster accordingly and use that time. But as Drake May wasn't ready immediately to start week 1, had they known that they could have been fired at the end of year 1 of this supposed year 3-year plan, they probably would have turned to May earlier, understanding that their job security is tied to his performance and what the future looks like. And as we went into the season, you and I both heard the front office gets frustrated. Like, why isn't Layden Robinson playing a little bit more? Why is Javon Baker still on the shelf? Why are you making these all of these short-term kind of decisions and leaning on veterans when we're all trying to find the plan? The reason was the coaches were trying to do something to improve the record, to sell themselves in that point. And there's none of that's totally surprising that you have some politicking going on and ownership changes its mind and people who aren't involved in football have a lot of say in that, as we just touched upon with Robin Glazer. The thing that after this happens, also on Monday morning in that meeting where the Crafts are addressing the team, staff, and players, Gerard Mayo spoke up, being like, what the hell? And as someone told us, it's the most awkward 3 minutes of their lives. Now, there are a lot of assistants and the head coach who are still out of football. This was not a good staff. Vrabel was a better option. This isn't to say anything should have changed. But when we talk about the bungling of a head coach being fired, from leaking it to an insider who lets players and coaches indirectly know and then not having great answers for the brother of the guy that you just fired immediately after the game was over. This was a mess more than you and I knew, reported, anyone saw, and it's unfortunate, and we're all moving on. But just like when you ask, can the Patriots get their shit together, and they are now with Vrabel, it just further highlights how much that the Crafts leaned on and used Belichick as a screen, as a meat shield for everything that was going on to run the show. And when it's left to their own decisions and powers, it's been a mess.
Yeah, 100%. And one other thing I would throw in about last season is that there seems to be such a sense of relief that the Patriots have a coaching staff now that is more experienced, that they can trust to develop players, because that did seem like it was a big issue for the Patriots. It's been repeated a bunch of times, but especially at wide receiver last year, where Jalen Polk might not have like fully helped himself last situation, but he also wasn't helped from a developmental phase with the coaches that the Patriots had. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff that people are still interested in about the 2024 season that's still out there, but it seems like we were able to kind of close in some of the gaps there.
Yeah, and the one thing that came from Elliot Wolf this week, who, of course, you know, as I've been told, was putting out a lot of fires around Gerard Mayo and Ron McGlazer and trying to get things going, to where he missed the owners' meetings in December. And multiple people are asking me, like, what the hell's going on? Why is Matt Groh walking around here? Is he said this week that the Patriots were not thorough enough ahead of free agency, okay, which is something you rarely hear admitted. The interpretation from people within the team and outside the league, or outside but in the league, was that was a shot at the coaches they had last year, who didn't know enough, weren't familiar with the players that they were bringing in. And we saw, obviously, that play out with Chooks, KJ Osborne, other guys. And the next comment within that same answer was how Elliott saw a great opportunity with this new staff that you just talked about. Has a lot more experience, much bigger networks. They're just better coaches. And you could argue whether or not that's the coach's job to provide scouting reports or have that kind of intel.
For sure.
But I don't think that those two comments of we weren't thorough enough, but now we can, thanks to the coaches, we're independent. Like, those two are related. And look, Wolf has got to do a better job. I've said he's the person under the most pressure this offseason. And the stuff about, it wasn't Jalen Polk's fault. Organizationally, we put too much on his plate. Other people were like, his attitude kind of sucked. Oh, and Tyler Hughes, from multiple people within the team, was the worst receivers coach folks have been around in a long, long time. And that's part of the reason he's gone.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a situation where Gerard Mayo didn't know enough people, wasn't able to bring in experienced coaches, and that's one of the positions that, unfortunately for the Patriots, since they drafted two players at the position, fell by the wayside last year.
Sure. All right, you want to talk Drake Maye?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, high expectations for Drake Maye. Like, people are saying, like, hey, him and Vrabel, that's the best thing we got going right now within the team. People on other teams are talking about how it's a deadly combination of Drake Maye and Mike Vrabel. It's scary to see that the Patriots are putting the people in the right place, because, like, I think that when the Patriots have as many bad seasons they've had now, it's kind of like, oh, maybe the Patriots just suck now. Maybe they're just a bottom feeder in the league. But then when they hire Mike Vrabel and Drake Maye looks for real and all these different things, it's like, crap, the Patriots are going to be good again. And yeah, someone that we spoke to believes that Drake Maye is going to be a top 5 quarterback sooner than later. Like, might not necessarily be this season, just because of like Patriots still need to build around him. But like, even by 2026, that's someone that people think is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And it's even funny.
Josh Allen, Joe Burrow are not like going anywhere, you know? Like,
right. Oh no, exactly. So like he would be up in that type of echelon of players. And it was funny. We were even talking to someone who was like, I preferred Jaden Daniels last year. And then, you know, it was someone within the team who was like, then I saw Drake Maye and I was like, oh no, we made the right, like, we lucked out taking Drake Maye at number 3, and that Jaden Daniels went above him, and then Drake Maye did fall to number 3. So, and that was someone who, yeah, it was encouraging to hear, and it wasn't someone who like necessarily had to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't hear a bad thing about Drake. We didn't hear a neutral thing about Drake.
No,
there are people
true.
Who just were like, to do what he did in that situation was borderline incredible. And it's not that he doesn't have warts. It's not that there aren't things to fix, but they just go, the Patriots have the right pieces in the right places, in the most important places, and their future looks really bright, not just because of all of the organizational competence and intelligence and structure that Mike Vrabel is going to bring, but you got a 22-year-old quarterback who exceeded every expectation. The one note that we heard too was that, you know, it seems to be that the organization cares about Maye's feelings in a way that might be a little unexpected for someone who will resemble Bill Belichick in certain aspects with Vrabel, who's always been his own guy. But the fact that they interviewed T.C. McCartney, the old quarterbacks coach, whom Drake was close with, in addition to Ashton Grant, who eventually got the job, some thought might have been just like a favor to him. Like, hey, we know you really wanted AVP to stay. You love TC. We'll bring TC in for an interview. Didn't get the job. And Ashton Grant didn't have ties to Josh McDaniels, so it wasn't that it was just Josh's call the whole time or guys that he had worked with. But it went to Grant, and now Robert Kugler is the only offensive assistant from last year, assistant offensive line coach, who's in the same job as he was a year ago. So, yeah, everyone's very, very high on Drake Maye, as they should be. Same with Mike Vrabel. Literally everyone in the front office we talked to this week was like, he's the man.
And like, they weren't saying that about everyone. So like, this isn't just like everything is perfect, everything is great. We heard some other like types of opinions on, you know, let's just say like, yeah, it wasn't all rosy about everything that we were hearing from people. Like, we're hearing some real opinions, but on Mike Vrabel, it was genuinely all positive. And like, honestly, from a lot of people that we talked to too, is like, listen, I love Gerard. Like, that's how they would start the conversations. That's how they would start sentences. It was like, I love Gerard, but Mike is just a completely different type of guy. Like, and I do genuinely think that like Mayo was probably more liked within the organization than disliked last year. It's kind of like, obviously in the story that we wrote after the season, there were certainly some negative things to say about Gerard Mayo, but it did seem like that might have been, you know, fewer people than people had positive things to say, but still genuinely 100% people are like, just the command that Vrabel has. He knows exactly what type of players that he wants the front office to find. He is the third most powerful person in the building. It's like, I think we heard someone say like, does anyone actually believe that Elliot Wolf has final say on the roster? Like, because like it not only like Vrabel is going to be and it, like being around Vrabel too, it's easy to see why he's going to take opinions from people. He's like someone who will absolutely listen to what people have to say, and he's going to value the scouting reports and everything. But like, he ultimately knows what he wants out of this team. And that's why I think that he'll be able to make those types of decisions for the Patriots.
And that's the best thing that scouts and executives with the Patriots have been happy about, is that when it comes down to a position or a position group, he knows exactly what he wants. The prototypes, the attitudes, the skill sets. This is not just smart, tough, dependable football players. Okay, well, they come in all shapes and sizes. Like, Vrabel's vision is not just this is the style we're going to play. These are the exact type of players who fit that. Go get them. They need to meet these benchmarks. They need to have these type of personalities. Like, they love what he has. And in meetings with agents that may or may not have happened, they've described him as direct, upbeat, energetic. And that's a contrast to some combine formal interviews where with prospects, he's testing them. Like, if you can't take me,
for sure. Yeah.
Not just busting balls, but like really getting harsh with you in these 15, actually now 18 minutes. I don't know if you're going to be able to take that working for me, period. So he knows how to not only just read the room, but play the room and command the room. Because in certain meetings, even with Elliot Wolf present and John Stretch Striker, we're going to get into in a minute, you know, Ryan Cowden, he's in charge. He's running the room. Everything flows through him. And that capacity to handle everything is something you heard is just wild, from all the organizational juggling the draft, juggling free agency, coaching hires. It all goes through him, and he can do it.
Yeah, I mean, some of these like meetings with agents, there's only one front office guy involved or whatever it is. But like with the big names, Vrabel is involved. With the big draft prospects, Vrabel is involved. Hiring the staff, Vrabel is involved. Like he's very on top of everything. And yeah, I mean, I think the Patriots are obviously in really great hands with Mike Vrabel, because that's what everyone within the building is saying about him as well.
One last
thing. Talk about Stretch? Oh, no.
No, I got one last note, because this is something I'd heard a year ago. And again, you want to confirm it. You want to get multiple perspectives on it. But when the Patriots hired their new assistants last year, there were some who were shocked, close to these assistants, at the moving packages they had gotten. Your moving allowance to relocate, and then how long you had to kind of stay in New England before the Crafts were like, all right, you got to find a home. And so, mind you, it's great to get a moving allowance. Some people don't get that for their jobs. But in this case, when you're hired for the Patriots, you're getting a jump up for agency. You need to research the draft. You need to set in a system, get to know your coworkers, like all these different things. You don't have much time to find a new house. Last year, the amount that assistants got was a fraction of a typical allowance. That's changed. And that was something Vrabel had heard. Supposedly in the interview process with the Kraft said, we need to give them more time. We need to give them more money. This is not what it's like around the league. Right. And this is partly paints a picture of the cheapness that has come up with the Krafts, but also speaks to how out of touch they are, I think, in terms of modern practices when it comes to hiring a staff, supporting football operations, and how you need to invest, not only just financially, but in your own people. Because what that says is, we don't really value you that much. We don't really care about the personal side. Just like get here. We'll give you time in a hotel. Right. We'll give you X thousand amount of dollars. But it was something that came up multiple times of like, this is shocking and you can't say it yet. And I was like, well, I need to hear it from other people. We did. That's changed. The guys have more money, more time to find houses. And it's important. Something that you don't think about, but matters to the guys coming into a new organization.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a big change. And like the Patriots have hotels on property, so it shouldn't be that tough to give them a few extra days in there, a few extra weeks in there to get comfortable before they do have to start buying houses. So yeah, that was really good to hear that the Patriots are improving in that way and offering more.
Yeah. All right, Stretch. So he's officially the vice president of football operations, and he is
football strategy. Is that
football operations and strategy? Yes.
Yeah.
In strategy. Vrabel, as we talked about, has his hands in a lot of pots. So does his right hand. Stretch has been involved or expected to be involved in personnel, game strategy, game planning, day-to-day operations. He also held individual meetings with agents in a way that scouts do and executives do. Sometimes it's checking in on a prospect, sometimes it's other business. That's a lot of trust for a dude who is either 34 or 35. Started his career as Vrabel's assistant of the head coach, as far as his NFL career, and still carry some of those duties. But because Vrabel, as you've said repeatedly, is the most powerful person in football operations in this organization, being that close to that power gives you not as much, but makes you almost like the number two, as some see it.
Well, yeah, that's why I said, like, I brought up to someone within the organization, that like a media member had told me that Stryker could wind up being a future GM. That like, that's how much he does. That's how much he's involved with. It's not like football operations and strategy. Obviously, operations is important. Strategy is in-game decision-making, but then also all these meetings that he's having with agents tells you that he's involved in personnel as well. So when I brought that up to someone within the team, they were like, I mean, yeah, he's basically like, if you look at it, Vrabel's number two right now, which like, if Vrabel's the head coach, then Stryker is like essentially like the assistant GM since he is Vrabel's right-hand man. So it's a really interesting power structure to get even further down the line below Vrabel, where you have all these guys where like Elliot Wolf is the EVP of player personnel, Ryan Cowden is the VP of player personnel. Then you've got Matt Groh, Alonzo Highsmith. Then you've got your directors, one of which left. Pat Stewart just went to Nebraska as their general manager. So that's one spot to fill. But like, most teams don't have so much uncertainty above those director roles. But now you definitely do have to throw Stretch into that mix as well, as someone who, I don't know exactly. I think like Wolf is still in charge of the front office. He's probably still the boss there. But since Stretch is Vrabel's right-hand man, like his assistant, if Vrabel's like the actual GM, then yeah, Stretch would kind of be the assistant GM below him.
Yeah, and it speaks to, in the same way Vrabel has this capacity to do all of these different duties. Again, similar, not identical to the way Belichick did. Stretch is similar in that way. That's a lot of trust. That's a lot of responsibility.
Right.
That's a lot of nuance and detail and understanding about all these various different parts of football operations, in the dynamics, in the personalities, and how to, handle everyone in the building. So for him to not only just be Vrabel's assistant, they let him talk to agents to handle things. It's much more than that. Like, this guy is on track that a lot of people, he made the Athletics 50 under 40 list. Spent last year with the Rams, who hired him after everyone got let go in Tennessee, and appreciably improved Sean McVay's game management. Like, he's a guy who's widely respected, widely known, and is on a fast track to do big things. We finally made it to the end. Extra points, as we called them. Christian Barmore, what do we hear?
A lot of little kind of uncertainty around Christian Barmore, where it's obviously very telling that they would need defensive tackle help regardless, especially if they trade away Devon Godshaw. But He's working out in Tampa, kind of just trusting the medicine right now, seeing where that takes them. I don't think anyone looks at it as a great sign that he had blood clots last year, then had to be shut down after recurrence. There's also people within the building who think the Patriots might have fast-tracked him a little bit back onto the field. I mean, I know we as media members were like, he practiced at the end of July, never in pads, practiced once in, what was it, November, once again, not in pads, and then returned to the field on Sunday. So it was like, wasn't on the field Wednesday in pads, was on the field Thursday in unpadded session, didn't practice Friday, and then he's back on the field for, what was it, like 25 snaps or something like that in his Patriots debut, which people thought that like even that was more than they expected him to play in that first game. And this is not to say that like them rushing him back is what led to the recurrence, but it's something that people within the organization are saying like, did it help? And like, no one's a doctor, like only the doctors know for sure. But you know, that is something that people in the organization are saying like, I don't know if that helped. I don't know if that was the best plan for him. So it's really a wait and see approach. And I haven't heard from anyone that like, yes, he's guaranteed to play next season, which is what you would obviously prefer to hear right now about him, given the medical situation.
Yes. And that's how they've handled it privately in meetings this week. When some people ask about Barmore,
right?
You know, Vrabel commands a room. He's loud. He's energetic. He's, you know, making a pitch or listening. Like supposedly shrinks a little bit when it comes up to Barmore. And he made comments to Karen Garrigan. So hat tips to Karen about, you know, the information she got, but it was very much a kind of a wait and see. And he's looking forward to working with Christian, but they have a checkup coming up here in a few weeks before the team returns April 7th for off-season program to see where he's at. And it goes without saying, but I like to say it again and again. The football is so secondary to just the health of this man, of this person, of this player. Like if he can go live a long, happy life, that's what matters. But from a football sense, they might not be able to count on having one of the best players on this roster who received one of the richest contracts in franchise history because of this situation. And that really changes how you need to approach the defensive line, where there are options in free agency and they're high in the draft. But you would really love to have this guy in the field, and they don't know yet whether or not that will be the case. One guy who is not going to be around, Director of Pro Personnel, Pat Stewart, who I think tomorrow you can officially call the general manager at Nebraska. He had almost 20 years of experience, leaves a notable hole in this front office. He had left New England where he started for 10 years, starting in 2007, goes to Philly and Carolina, gets to be VP of whatever, but is high up with the Panthers. Comes back in 2023. The interesting part about Stewart is not only he could do pro and college personnel, and the Patriots need as many experienced evaluators as they can get, is what do they do with this opening? Because to me, this is a tell of where this front office will go after the draft. Does it stay an Elliott Wolf-led operation? Or is Ryan Cowden, who's officially by title the number 2 and tight with Vrabel, whom Vrabel hired immediately after getting hired himself, going to replace Wolf and get to pick the guy to add a little bit more power within the network of this front office that continues to change?
Yeah, it really is going to be telling. Promoting from within is usually what teams do, but since Vrabel is new, since Cowden is new, since Stretch is new, I think they probably would infiltrate is the wrong word, but like, get some more of their own new guys in there as much as possible, since everyone who would be below Pat Stewart would have been people that Elliott Wolf had hired. So there's definitely some smart people in the building who could fill that role, and no one really seems to know right now. Basically what we heard is that it's all hands on deck right now to fill what Pat did. And like I was saying earlier about the organizational structure, it helps that you have so many people above that director role, where like Alonzo Highsmith has been super involved in a lot of front offices. Matt Groh has held a lot of power in recent years. Usually he's been on the college side, but in his current role as director of player personnel, he certainly had to do a lot on the pro side as well. Ryan Cowden's done a lot on the pro side. Elliott Wolf has done a lot on the pro side. So they definitely have the right guys to be taking over those roles. But at some point you are going to have to name someone director of pro scouting. And it's going to be very telling if that's a promotion, aka a Wolf guy, or if it's a new guy that Cowden and Vrabel have worked with in the past, or if it's someone just completely new to everyone, because that's the way the Patriots handled some of their coaching hires as well. Like Thomas Brown didn't have ties to really anyone, and they brought him in as passing game coordinator and tight ends coach. So they could just be saying like, we need new blood. We need people who have different opinions. Let's hire someone that no one knows, which would be maybe the best situation. Who knows?
And Pat had been here, but he also came aboard, I think, because everyone in Carolina got laid off. Like you also don't know if you're a front office it was going to be available in your free agency in mid-May if there's someone that Cowden and Elliott really like.
Yeah,
maybe you, like you said, you kind of split the difference and be like, we want to bring him on board as someone who's been around and a sharp evaluator and has a good network and this and that.
And like usually front office contracts run out after the draft, so this could be a situation where the Patriots say like, we'll get through. Like free agency is so close right now that you can't really like hire a director of pro scouting and be like, all right, run free agency or whatever. So I don't know for sure, but this could be a move that you see someone named in that title in May and not necessarily now before free agency.
Yeah, that would be my full expectation. And because these guys also have to run point with agents and contracts and conversations and all those different things. So you'll miss that from Pat, who's well known around the league. Again, he's been around almost 20 years. Actually came up at Ohio State. So there's trust there, relationship, Vrabel, et cetera. As well as Cowden, but it's just they're just going to have to move on without him, and however they fill that role will be telling. But we might know before then if Wolf takes a back seat, which some see as a possibility, and we don't know. I'm not here to fuel that, but it's just something that happens around the league and could happen with Ryan Cowden, who was Vrabel's reported pick to be a GM last head coaching cycle and is now here, as we said, as the number 2. One small thing: next Patriots staffers at the combine caught up with. And he told me he thinks Matt Slater will eventually return to coaching. And I love that Slater stuck around, because he's like the best person you don't really know, but you know enough. You're like, if there's ever an easy path to heaven, he's got it. And they also were like, look, and I know this about Matthew, he's got a lot of kids. His wife's a doctor. There will be some convincing here. And if it's not New England, they would have to move, which I don't think he wants to do. But that is someone who knows Matthew Slater well, suggested that, caught my eye. Another person said, hey, Javon Baker's still their best talent, most talented wideout. Like, there are things he can do physically none of the other guys can. And another expressed that Baker, after obviously a super disappointing season, has recommitted himself. And we'll see. Like, talk is cheap. There will be opportunity. He's got to seize it. 4th-round picks in their second season, if they disappoint, get cut all the time. And he's developed a relationship with Vrabel.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we heard that he's developed a relationship with Vrabel, which is good to hear. And I don't know how heavy that is, but it does seem like the kind of guy, like a Vrabel type of guy, that's like, all right, how do we get you back on track? Like let's get this figured out one way or the other. And that's one situation where like usually you would look at a young player coming into a situation where there's a lot of new coaches. Maybe you get left by the wayside because like you're not their guy now at this point. It cannot get worse for Javon Baker than it was last year. So like this is either like it stays the same and he does nothing again this year, or this is a positive development for him. And he's got Vrabel now coming in. He's got Josh McDaniels. He's got Todd Downing. Someone there believes in him and then brings him along to do what he's capable of doing, which what we saw at UCF in 2023 was obviously being one of the best wide receivers in college football. So I do like, out of anyone from last year's draft class, I do think that the new regime will be the most positive for Javon Baker, just because there's literally nowhere to go for him but up.
When you have the same number of catches in a season as the left tackle did, yes, there's nowhere to go but up. All right, I'm not going to ask you if we missed anything because it has been well over an hour, maybe an hour and a half, getting close there. I'm proud of the work we did. I've not told you this, but I'm exceptionally proud and happy to work with you. This was a treat, as tiring as it was. I learned a lot. I met a lot of new people. Like to think I did that the same for you and the connections we built. This is impossible to do without you, and it really means a lot to get to work with you. So this was awesome. I'm really glad we put this together. And we'll have a lot more because this was better than last year and we did the same thing. So I'm excited to see what kind of comes from both of us, as well as the Patriots, because I think they have a chance to pull off a lot of what we just described.
Yeah, no, it's very important to work as a team in these situations. And I don't think anyone works as a team better than us, just because like, I mean, obviously there's situations where it's like, all right, let's split up to try to handle two things at once here. But I do think that when we're working together and trying to get as much information from people as possible, it does make sense to have the 2-man approach. And we were able to gather, like you said, more information than we've ever gathered before. And it really was a fun time. The combine is stressful. It's like, it's what you hear where you're out at bars late at night trying to talk to people and meet new people and do all those different things. But there is also a fun aspect of it where people from teams, media members, you only really get to see them like once or twice a year. And like, those are the fun aspects of this where you kind of all get together. It's like a little reunion every year where you get to see your old friends. And I know that we shared a lot of laughs with Danny Kelly, Danny Heifetz, Craig from the Fantasy Ringer podcast, Lena Getzenberg, Catherine Fitzgerald, Brooke Pryor. Like, we have so many friends in the industry that it's so fun to see them every year. And like, that's the recharge you need of like, either whether it's a 2-hour dinner that you're sharing with them out to eat, or whether it's like you start off your night at the bar, hanging out with them first before the real work kicks in. Like, you do still need that aspect of it so that it's not just essentially 24 hours a day of work. So that's an important element as well. And it really was a fun week.
Yeah. Having conversations where I'm focused on you, and this is common to everyone. It sounds douchey, frankly, but you're always peeking around the corner in case so-and-so walks by, new person, new executive, head coach, whatever, grab a couple minutes, walk and talk, just to focus, be present, and hang out and be normal. Though it's been wild to see regular people walking around my neighborhood, which is a lot quieter than downtown Indianapolis. I'm like, you guys don't talk football? Why aren't you in athleisure? Why don't you have like a credential hanging around your neck? This is back to day-to-day life. And it's a good time. And thankfully we'll be in Indianapolis, which is every football writer's favorite thing. Like, keep the combine in Indianapolis. No one else cares about that but us. No. But look, if you're listening to the end of this podcast and it's been now very close to an hour and a half, you care enough to listen. So we thank you for that. Please read the story. You heard virtually just about everything, but there's certainly a detail here or two that you missed. And give us a rate or review on the pod. Every kind of feedback helps. You can email me at acallahan@bostonherald.com as well. He is DKYED@bostonherald.com. Read the story, rate, review, and subscribe to Pat's Interference as well as Pat's Chat. We need to go because we cannot talk any more football with more football people. We need to see our families. But appreciate you as always. And of course, you'll be back probably when we're at the owners' meetings later this month. All right.
Yep. Sounds good. Talk to you later.